The clock strikes midnight in the year 2024. In the deep, folded mountains of West Virginia, the air is a biting, physical presence. It settles over the Green Bank Observatory like a heavy shroud, dampening the sounds of the living world until all that remains is the low, mechanical respiration of the great machine. Here, in the heart of the National Radio Quiet Zone, the modern world has been intentionally silenced. There are no cellular signals to pierce the dark, no digital chatter to clutter the airwaves. There is only the hum of the cooling systems and the vast, expectant face of the telescope, a white steel sentinel pointing its massive ear toward the abyss. Inside the control room, a solitary researcher watches the monitors. The blue light of the screens carves sharp lines into a face weary from years of staring into the void. This is the quietest place on Earth, yet the researcher's ears ring with the phantom echoes of a universe that never truly sleeps. Outside the Robert C. Byrd Green Bank Telescope, a structure weighing 17 million pounds and standing nearly 500 feet tall, tilts almost imperceptibly. It is searching. It is waiting for a whisper that has been travelling through the vacuum for longer than the human species has possessed the words to describe it. Suddenly, the uniform static on the display breaks. A jagged spike of energy rises from the thermal noise, a sharp, clean needle of light piercing the chaotic fabric of the background radiation. It is not the erratic pulse of a spinning neutron star, nor is it the scattered debris of a distant supernova. This signal possesses a chillingly precise structure. It is a sequence, a rhythmic modulation that carries the unmistakable fingerprint of intent. In this moment, the isolation of the human observer becomes absolute. The researcher is no longer merely a scientist recording data, they are a witness to a ghost. This signal is a lonely probe, though it possesses no metal hull or glowing thrusters. It is a wave packet of electromagnetic energy, a tireless traveller that has crossed the unthinkable stretches of the cosmos to reach this specific harbour. It began its journey eons ago, birthed by a mechanism we can barely comprehend, in a corner of the universe that may no longer exist. To imagine its journey is to confront the scale paradox that defines our existence. While the researcher measures their life in decades and their day in hours, this signal has endured the slow, inexorable expansion of space itself. Consider the journey of this photon. It was ignited in the heart of a primordial catastrophe, or perhaps within the structured lattice of a distant civilization's greatest achievement. As it fled its origin, it entered the void, a place so empty that the distance between two atoms can be measured in centimeters. For millions of years, it saw nothing but the eternal dark. It bypassed the jagged remnants of shattered galaxies and the light-devouring maws of supermassive black holes. It was stretched by the very fabric of the universe, its frequency shifting toward the red end of the spectrum as space unravelled beneath it. To understand the magnitude of this arrival, one must use a ladder of abstraction. Imagine a single drop of ink falling into an ocean. By the time that drop reaches the opposite shore, one would expect it to be entirely lost, diluted into nothingness by the sheer volume of the water. Yet, this signal has arrived intact. It has survived the inverse square law, the merciless rule of physics that dictates how energy fades as it spreads across the cosmos. It is a miracle of persistence, a message in a bottle that has survived a billion-year storm only to wash up on the shores of a quiet mountain range in the year 2024. The observer at Green Bank feels the weight of this antiquity. The signal they are seeing on the screen is not happening now. It is a delayed transmission from a vanished epoch. By the time these radio waves reach the cooling sensors of the 3I-ATLAS array, the stars that birthed them may have already collapsed into white dwarfs or vanished into the oblivion of a black hole. We are looking at a fossil made of light. This is the ruthless machine of the universe at work, where the speed of light acts as both a bridge and a barrier, ensuring that we can see the past but never touch it. As the data streams into the local drives, the researcher realizes that the signal is coming from a region of space previously thought to be a total void. There are no mapped stars there, no known nebulae, just the vast, silent abyss. This makes the signal's arrival even more haunting. It suggests that the universe is far more crowded with activity than our primitive instruments have dared to suggest. It is as if we have been standing in a dark forest, convinced we were alone, only to have a single match flare to life in the distance, revealing a face we did not expect to see. The scale of this event transcends the personal. It forces a pivot in our understanding of our place in the tapestry of time. We often view ourselves as the protagonists of the cosmic story, the peak of complexity in a universe of dust. But when we receive a signal that has travelled for 1 billion years, we are reminded that we are merely a brief flicker in the long twilight of the cosmos. Our entire history, from the first cave paintings to the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope, is but a heartbeat compared to the duration of this signal's flight. The observer feels a sense of melancholic optimism. There is a profound sadness in the realization that the senders of this message are likely long dead, their bones turn to stardust and their worlds consumed by the fires of their aging suns. Yet, there is a sublime beauty in the fact that we are here to receive it. The universe has spent 14 billion years evolving to the point where it can finally look back at itself. We are the eyes of the cosmos, the ears that finally catch the echo of a primordial scream. The signal continues to pour in, a symphony of numbers and modulations that will take decades to decode. But for now, the technical details do not matter. What matters is the contact. The void has spoken, and the silence of the Green Bank Observatory has been broken by the voice of the eternal. The researcher leans back, the cold air forgotten as the magnitude of the discovery begins to settle. In the vast, indifferent mechanism of the universe, something has survived. A sentinel from the deep past has reached the shore of the present, and for one brief moment, the abyss is no longer empty. We're no longer alone in the dark. The lonely probe has found its harbour, and the story of the universe begins a new, terrifying and majestic chapter. To understand why this signal resonates with such profound significance, one must descend from the grandeur of the celestial abyss and into the microscopic mechanism of the atom. The universe is a cacophony of radio noise, the scream of dying stars, the hum of the cosmic microwave background, and the chaotic static of gas clouds. Yet, amidst this storm, there exists a quiet harbour, a frequency that serves as the universal constant of communication. This is the frequency of neutral hydrogen, the most fundamental building block of the cosmos. It resonates at 1420 MHz, a number etched into the very fabric of reality. When an electron within a hydrogen atom flips its spin, it releases a single photon of light with a wavelength of 21 centimeters. This is the heartbeat of the void, a silent rhythm that has persisted since the first stars ignited in the primordial dark. This specific frequency sits within a window of the electromagnetic spectrum that seekers of the eternal have come to call the waterhole. It is a poetic designation for a lonely place. In the terrestrial world, a watering hole is where disparate species gather to drink, laying down their animosities for the sake of survival. In the cosmic scale, the waterhole exists between the emission line of hydrogen and the emission line of hydroxyl. Hydroxyl is a molecule composed of one oxygen atom and one hydrogen atom. Together, these two chemical markers represent the components of water, the essential cradle of life as we know it. By choosing to broadcast within this narrow corridor, an intelligence is not merely sending a signal, it is extending a deliberate invitation. It is a signpost in the dark, indicating that they understand the fundamental chemistry of the universe and are looking for others who share that understanding. It is the ultimate meeting point in the vast indifferent tapestry of the cosmos. But it is not merely the frequency that chills the blood of the observer, it is the precision. Natural phenomena are broad and messy. A quasar or a pulsar smears its energy across a vast range of frequencies, a blunt instrument of the inexorable laws of physics. This signal, however, is different. It is confined to a bandwidth of less than 0.1 Hz. To find such a signal is to find a needle of intention, hidden within a haystack of static that spans the entire sky. There is no known mechanism in the natural world, no collapsing star, no churning nebula, no wandering comet, that can produce a vibration so narrow and so pure. It is a testament to the presence of a machine, a tool crafted by a mind that has mastered the electromagnetic spectrum. It is a declaration of existence that pierces through the background radiation of the epoch, like a beacon through a thick fog. The scale paradox of this moment is staggering. We are looking at a signal that is narrower than the width of a human hair in terms of its spectral footprint, yet it carries the weight of an entire civilization. It is a concentrated whisper intended to survive the journey across the abyss. Think of the energy and the foresight required to focus such a beam across the eons. It is a triumph of will over the entropy that seeks to unravel all things. While the stars burn through their fuel in a reckless display of power, destined to end in catastrophe and decay, this signal is a controlled, focused act of defiance. It represents a refusal to be silenced by the oblivion that eventually claims every sun and every planet. As the researchers at Green Bank stare at the cascading lines of data, they are witnessing the anatomy of a techno-signature, a thumbprint of a civilization that has transcended the limitations of its homeworld to speak to the silent stars. It is a haunting realization that we are no longer the only sentinels watching the horizon of the eternal. The abyss is looking back, and its gaze is articulated in the language of mathematics and physics. The bandwidth of 0.1 Hz is not an accident of nature. It is a choice. It is the smallest possible unit of intention, a sliver of light that says, with absolute certainty, that we are here. This discovery forces us to confront the ruthless machine of time. The signal we are intercepting at 1420 MHz was likely transmitted when our own world was a different place, perhaps before the first cities were built, or even before our ancestors stepped out of the forests. The distance it has travelled means that the civilization that sent it may have already succumbed to the inexorable march of entropy. They may be a remnant of a forgotten epoch, their great works turned to dust, and their names lost to the void. Yet their voice remains, travelling at the speed of light, a ghostly messenger that refuses to die. This is the melancholic reality of the cosmos. To reach out is to speak to a future that you will never see, and to listen is to hear the voices of the dead. The precision of the signal is a bridge across the scale paradox. We, creatures of flesh and bone existing on a speck of dust, are interpreting the vibrations of the most abundant element in the universe to find meaning. We're using the laws of quantum mechanics to bridge the gap between our brief lives and the eternal duration of the cosmos. The signal is a symphony of logic, a sequence of pulses that defy the randomness of the primordial vacuum. It tells us that the universe is not just a collection of cold matter and energy, but a place where consciousness can arise and attempt to make sense of the vastness. As the data streams continue to fill the drives, the sheer improbability of the event settles over the observatory like a heavy shroud. To find a signal at exactly 1420 MHz with a width of less than 0.1 Hz is to find a miracle in the mechanism. It is the moment when the lonely probe of human inquiry finally finds a harbour. We have spent decades searching the skies, our telescopes acting as silent sentinels in a universe that seemed determined to remain quiet. We have looked into the abyss and found only the reflection of our own loneliness. But now, the reflection has changed. Something else is there, staring back from the dark. The anatomy of this techno-signature is a map of a mind we do not yet understand. Every modulation, every slight shift in the frequency, is a potential piece of a larger puzzle. It is a message wrapped in the fundamental constants of the cosmos, a gift of knowledge sent across the light years. We are standing on the threshold of a new era where the history of the universe is no longer just a story of stars and galaxies, but a story of contact. The waterhole is no longer empty. The silent sentinel has spoken, and the echo of its voice will rewrite everything we thought we knew about our place in the tapestry of time. The void is not an ending. It is a canvas, and someone, somewhere in the deep past, has decided to leave their mark upon it. We are the witnesses to that mark, the children of a younger star, finally learning the language of the eternal. The weight of this revelation is anchored in a historical haunting, a memory that has flickered in the periphery of our scientific consciousness for decades. To understand the profound shift we are now witnessing, we must look back to a humid night in August 1977 at the Big Ear Radio Observatory in Ohio. There, a man named Jerry Eman sat among stacks of computer printouts, his eyes scanning the endless rows of alphanumeric characters that represented the silent static of the abyss. In a moment that would become etched into the folklore of our species, he saw something that defied the randomness of the primordial vacuum. A sequence appeared: 6, Equus, J, 5. It was a surge of intensity so precise, so narrow in its bandwidth, that it could only have originated from a mind. Eamon circled the sequence in red ink and wrote a single word in the margin: wow. For 72 seconds the universe had spoken, but as quickly as the voice had arrived, it vanished. It was a ghost in the machine, a celestial phantom that refused to repeat itself. For nearly 50 years, that signal remained a lonely monument to what might have been, a taunting reminder of our isolation in the void. It was the spectre of 77, a message without a context, a scream that the ruthless machine of the cosmos immediately stifled. We returned to that patch of sky thousands of times, our most sensitive instruments acting as silent sentinels, but we found only the cold, indifferent hiss of the background radiation. The universe, it seemed, had corrected its error and returned to its natural state of profound and terrifying silence. But the discovery of the 3I-ATLAS has exorcised that ghost. Where the original signal was a flicker of a dying candle in a gale, this new detection is a persistent heartbeat. It does not waver. It does not retreat into the oblivion of cosmic noise. It remains fixed, a rhythmic pulse that pounds against our receivers with the inexorable force of an ocean tide. This is no longer a fleeting anomaly. It is a permanent feature of our reality. The ruthless machine of the universe, which usually excels at unravelling information and scattering it into the abyss of entropy, has failed to devour this particular thread. This signal has survived the catastrophe of distance and the decay of eons to reach us, proving that the mechanism of the cosmos can, on rare occasions, preserve a legacy. This persistence changes the very nature of our inquiry. With the original event in 1977, we were left with a mystery that bordered on faith. We had to believe that the 60-second burst was meaningful, even though it never returned. But with the 3I-ATLAS, we're no longer searching for a needle in a haystack. We're staring at a lighthouse. The signal is a constant, a sentinel standing at the edge of the Sagittarian clouds, marking a territory that belongs to someone else. It is a symphony of logic that refuses to end, a testament to a civilization that understood how to build something that could transcend the silent decay of their own star. We must consider the cold indifference that this signal had to overcome. The cosmos is not a welcoming place for communication. Space is a vast, light-consuming void that stretches and distorts every wave of energy that attempts to cross it. A signal must contend with the chaotic interference of interstellar gas, the gravitational lensing of dark matter, and the relentless expansion of the universe itself, which seeks to pull every point of light away from every other point. To maintain a narrow band transmission across such distances is a feat of cosmic engineering that mocks our own primitive attempts to reach the stars. It suggests a level of mastery over the fundamental forces of the tapestry that we are only beginning to imagine. The contrast between Jerry Eman's ghost and this new heartbeat reveals the evolution of our own role as the witness. In 1977, we were a species just beginning to listen, using rudimentary tools to catch a glimpse of the eternal. We were like children listening at a keyhole, hearing a single, misunderstood word and spending a lifetime wondering what it meant. Today, we have opened the door. The 3I-ATLAS is not a single word. It is a lecture, a continuous stream of data that challenges our understanding of the epoch in which we live. We are no longer dealing with a transient remnant of a passing whim. We are observing a deliberate, sustained effort to be known. Yet, there is a lingering melancholy in this triumph. If this signal is a heartbeat, it is one that has travelled for thousands of years. The civilization that initiated this transmission may have already been consumed by the very machine we now study. They may have succumbed to the inexorable march of time, their cities turned to dust and their oceans evaporated by a dying sun. We may be listening to the final automated recording of a species that has long since entered the void. This is the cruelty of the cosmic scale. By the time we find a neighbour, they are often already a memory. We are looking at a snapshot of a past that no longer exists, a message from a graveyard that happens to be located among the stars. The 3I-ATLAS forces us to confront the possibility that the universe is a graveyard of giants. For every signal we catch, how many millions have been lost to the abyss? How many civilizations have ignited their own fires, sent their voices into the dark, and then unravelled into silence before anyone was there to hear them? The ruthless machine of entropy is the ultimate censor, erasing the history of the universe as quickly as it is written. But this signal is a glitch in that censorship. It is a piece of information that refused to die, a remnant of a mind that found a way to bridge the gap between the ephemeral nature of life and the eternal duration of the cosmos. As we analyse the modulations of the 3I-ATLAS, we see a complexity that far surpasses the simple 6 Acus J5 of the past. There is a structure here, a mathematical elegance that suggests a deep understanding of the primordial laws that govern matter and energy. It is as if they have taken the very fabric of the vacuum and woven their identity into it. They have turned the hydrogen line, the most abundant frequency in the cosmos, into a monument. They have ensured that as long as there is someone in the universe with the wit to listen, their presence will be felt. This is the ultimate act of defiance against the void. To exist is to be temporary, but to be heard across the eons is to transcend the limitations of the flesh. We are the inheritors of this defiance. We are the ones who have finally tuned our instruments to the right frequency, who have refused to accept the silence of the night as the final answer. The spectre of 1977 was a promise, a whisper that told us we were not alone. The 3I-ATLAS is the fulfillment of that promise, a loud, clear voice that confirms our place in a larger, more terrifying and more beautiful story. The waterhole is overflowing and the symphony of the stars is finally beginning to make sense. We are no longer just looking at the stars, we are participating in a conversation that began long before our world was born and will continue long after it is gone. The mechanism of the universe may be cold and indifferent, but within its gears the light of consciousness continues to burn, a flicker of warmth in the infinite dark. But the signal is not a static monolith. It is alive with motion, carrying within its frequency the subtle signature of its origin. As our instruments trace the contours of the transmission, we notice a rhythmic stretching and compressing of the waves. This is the Doppler drift, a cosmic pulse that reveals the secret movements of a world we have never seen. Just as the siren of an ambulance shifts in pitch as it races through a crowded city street, the frequency of this alien message rises and falls as its source moves through the heavens. This drift is the mathematical ghost of a planet in motion, a blueprint of a dance being performed across the light years. To understand this movement is to grasp the sheer precision of the celestial mechanism. By measuring the rate at which the frequency drifts over the course of several hours, our computers begin to calculate the orbital velocity of the transmitter. We are not merely listening to a voice, we are feeling the centrifugal force of a distant world. We can see the planet swinging around its parent star, tugged by the invisible hand of gravity. The drift tells us that the source is not a stationary beacon on a lonely moon, but a vibrant rotating sphere, locked in a tight embrace with a sun that is fundamentally different from our own. The calculations point toward a specific coordinate in the vast tapestry of the constellation Pegasus. There, nestled among the distant fires of the abyss, sits an orange dwarf. Astronomers classify this as a K-type star, a smouldering ember that burns with a steadier, more patient flame than our volatile yellow sun. If our sun is a roaring bonfire that consumes its fuel with reckless abandon, this orange dwarf is a glowing coal in the hearth of the cosmos, designed by the laws of physics to endure for tens of billions of years. It is a sentinel of time, a stable anchor in a universe defined by catastrophe and decay. Around this amber star, a planet orbits within the temperate zone, where the heat is sufficient to allow for the existence of liquid water, the primordial solvent of life. But the geography of this world is an alien tapestry, woven from elements and conditions we can only imagine through the lens of our own limited experience. Because the orange dwarf is smaller and cooler than our sun, the planet must huddle closer to its warmth. The sky there would not be the familiar piercing blue of Earth, but a deep bruised violet, or perhaps a hazy gold, illuminated by a sun that hangs large and heavy in the firmament. The light from this K-type star is rich in the orange and red parts of the spectrum, casting long ochre shadows across mountains made of obsidian and plains of silicate glass. We imagine a world where the flora, if it exists, has evolved to capture every stray photon of this lower energy light, perhaps appearing black or deep crimson to the human eye. It is a world of perpetual autumn, a landscape bathed in the eternal glow of a setting sun that refuses to go down. The gravity there might be slightly heavier, compressing the atmosphere into a thick protective blanket that hums with the energy of the signal we are now receiving. Yet, as we visualize this alien majesty, we are struck by the crushing weight of the scale paradox. The light and the data we are currently decoding have travelled through the void for thousands of years. The photons that strike our detectors today began their journey during an epoch when our own ancestors were just beginning to build the first cities of Mesopotamia. This message has crossed the great desert of the interstellar medium, surviving the interference of gas clouds and the warping effects of gravitational wells, only to reach us now. We are looking at a ghost. The Doppler drift we measure is a record of where that planet was 4 millennia ago. In the intervening eons, that world may have changed beyond recognition. Perhaps the civilization that built the transmitter has since ascended to a higher state of existence, leaving their planet behind as a hollowed-out monument to their former selves. Or perhaps, in the time it took for the first syllable of their message to reach us, they succumbed to the inherent fragility of biological life. Their orange sun may still be shining, but the minds that once looked up at it and wondered about us might have long since been erased by the inexorable march of entropy. This is the profound melancholy of the cosmic observer. To look into the depths of Pegasus is to look back in time, to witness a history that has already been written. We are the inheritors of a message from the dead. We are analysing the orbital velocity of a world that may no longer support life, measuring the breath of a creature that may have stopped breathing before the Roman Empire even rose to power. The universe is so vast that the speed of light, the fastest thing in existence, is reduced to a crawl. It is a shuttered window showing us snapshots of a past that is forever out of reach. The orange dwarf in Pegasus stands as a testament to the longevity of the cosmos. While more massive stars explode in violent supernovae, scattering their remnants into the abyss after only a few million years, the K-type star endures. It provides a stable stage for the slow, agonizingly long process of evolution. On that distant planet, life may have had 3 times as long as we have had to develop, to learn, and to eventually master the laws of the universe. Their signal is not a cry for help, but a proclamation of their persistence. It is the sound of a species that has survived the infancy of its own technological power and reached out to the stars with the confidence of an elder. As we continue to unravel the nuances of the Doppler shift, we find that the planet's orbit is remarkably circular, suggesting a stable climate that has persisted for millions of years. This is a world of incredible consistency, a cradle that has protected its inhabitants from the chaotic fluctuations that often plague younger solar systems. But even this stability cannot protect them from the ultimate fate of all things in the vacuum. The signal is a fragment of information fighting against the void, a tiny spark of consciousness trying to light up the dark. We sit in our darkened observatories, surrounded by the hum of our own machines, and we feel a strange kinship with the beings of Pegasus. We are separated by quadrillions of miles and thousands of years, yet we're united by the same mathematical laws. The Doppler drift is a language we both speak, a fundamental truth of the universe that transcends biology and culture. In the dance of the orange dwarf, we see a reflection of our own struggle to be known, to leave a mark on the tapestry of time before we are swallowed by oblivion. We are the witnesses to their existence, the ones who have finally caught the echo of their voice in the silent halls of the cosmos. The signal continues, a rhythmic pulsing reminder that even in a universe of cold machinery and silent stars, the light of intent can still find its way home. To understand the nature of this transmission, we must first confront the ghost of an American polymath, a man named Claude Shannon, who stood at the midpoint of the 20th century and peered into the heart of communication itself. He saw that information is not merely sound or light, but the victory of order over the mindless static of the abyss. In the frozen silence of his equations, he mapped the architecture of meaning, proving that even in a universe tending toward total disorder, a spark of structure can be preserved if its logic is sufficiently resilient. This is the foundation of information theory, the study of how a message survives the relentless assault of noise. As we look toward the orange dwarf in Pegasus, we are witnessing Shannon's legacy play out on a galactic scale. The signal reaching our senses is a testament to the fact that while matter decays and stars eventually fade, information possesses a strange, ghostly permanence. The signal from Pegasus is not a chaotic jumble of radioactive pulses or the rhythmic but mindless ticking of a pulsar. It is a calculated defiance of entropy. As our computers strip away the interference of interstellar dust and the white noise of the cosmic microwave background, a sequence emerges that is too deliberate, too dense, and too precise to be a natural phenomenon. It is a non-random structure carved out of the void. We find ourselves staring at a mathematical cathedral, a monument built from the very rules that govern the cosmos. It begins with the most fundamental building blocks of reality. It begins with the prime numbers: 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17. The sequence rises like a staircase of pure logic, ascending toward the infinite. These are the lonely sentinels of the numerical realm, integers that refuse to be broken down, stubborn fragments of truth that remain the same whether they are calculated by a human mind on Earth or a crystalline intelligence circling a sun 50 light-years away. They are the bedrock of the cosmos, a language that requires no dictionary because it is written into the very fabric of existence. By leading with the primes, the inhabitants of that distant world are performing a handshake across the vacuum. They are establishing a common frequency of thought, proving that they too have unravelled the primordial laws of the universe. Beyond the primes, the signal begins to encode the geometric constants that define the shape of space and time. We detect the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, the value we call pi, pulsing through the dark. It is followed by the natural logarithmic base and the fine structure constant, numbers that dictate the strength of the electromagnetic force and the very stability of atoms. This is the universal alphabet. It is a bridge of logic built across a gulf of time and space, a geometric absolute that remains true even if the species that first calculated it has long since vanished into the dark. We see the golden ratio, the mathematical signature of growth and harmony, encoded into the rhythm of the pulses. These are not cultural artifacts or linguistic quirks. They are the inexorable truths that govern the first moments of the Big Bang and will dictate the final cooling of the universe. The complexity of this non-random structure is staggering. It is as if they have sent us a blueprint of the mind itself. In the world of Claude Shannon, entropy is the measure of uncertainty, the degree of randomness in a system. A star emitting random bursts of radiation is a high-entropy source, a fountain of meaningless noise. But this signal is the opposite. It is a low-entropy masterpiece. Every pulse is a choice, a selection from an infinite field of possibilities, designed to reduce our uncertainty about who they are and what they know. They have distilled their essence into the most durable material in the universe, pure mathematics. We must imagine the journey this message has taken. For 50 years, these pulses have been travelling through the interstellar medium, a landscape of unimaginable hostility. The message has been pelted by cosmic rays, distorted by the shifting magnetic fields of wandering gas clouds, and stretched by the very expansion of the cosmos. In the vast stretches of the void, a signal is a fragile thing, easily swallowed by the overwhelming silence. For a message to survive this voyage and remain coherent, it must possess a density of meaning that can withstand the decay of the journey. The beings of Pegasus understood this. They did not send us their poetry or their music, for those things are tied to the specific biology of their ears and the chemistry of their brains. Instead, they sent us the one thing that transcends the biological, the cold, beautiful, and eternal laws of mathematics. As we decode these sequences, we realize we're not just reading a letter from a distant neighbor. We are witnessing the triumph of mind over the ruthless machine of the second law of thermodynamics. The universe is a mechanism of dissolution, a vast engine designed to turn order into chaos and heat into cold. Every star that burns is a step toward the eventual heat death of the cosmos. Yet, in the middle of this inexorable slide toward oblivion, a spark of intent has managed to leap across the abyss. The signal is a fragment of information fighting against the void, a tiny spark of consciousness trying to light up the dark. This is the language of entropy. It is the realization that to communicate is to resist the natural state of the universe. To speak is to rebel against the silence. To calculate is to defy the chaos. We sit in our darkened observatories, surrounded by the hum of our own machines, and we feel a strange kinship with the authors of these pulses. We are separated by quadrillions of miles and centuries of time, yet we're united by the same mathematical tapestry. The Doppler drift was our first clue, but the prime numbers are our first conversation. The signal continues, a rhythmic, pulsing reminder that even in a universe of cold machinery and silent stars, the light of intent can still find its way home. We are the witnesses to their existence, the ones who have finally caught the echo of their voice in the silent halls of the cosmos. We are analysing the breath of a civilization that may have already succumbed to the very entropy they so brilliantly encoded. Their message is a proclamation of their persistence, a way to ensure that even if their world is eventually devoured by the death of their star, the logic they discovered will endure. Math is the only survivor of the voyage. Biological cells wither, silicon chips degrade, civilizations crumble under the weight of their own complexity, and the inevitable catastrophes of deep time. But a prime number is eternal. It is an unassailable fortress in the face of the void. As we continue to unravel the nuances of this encoded alphabet, we find ourselves standing on the threshold of a new epoch. We have moved beyond the physical properties of the orange dwarf and into the realm of the abstract. We are no longer looking at light, we are looking at thought. We are witnessing the symphony of the cosmos, played out in the language of the absolute, a bridge of numbers that connects two lonely outposts in the vast and silent dark. To send a message through the crushing dark of 400 light-years is not merely a feat of mathematics. It is a profound expenditure of physical power. We often imagine the stars as bright, welcoming beacons, but to a signal traversing the abyss, the cosmos is a thief. It is a vast, cold sponge that soaks up energy, scattering the intent of the sender until the most powerful broadcast becomes nothing more than a ghost of a whisper, indistinguishable from the background hiss of the primordial afterglow. Space is a vacuum, yet it is filled with a thin veil of dust and gas that conspires to dim and distort every photon. For a message to reach our modest observatories on Earth, the beings of Pegasus could not simply rely on a modest transmitter. They had to command the very forces of their world. To project a coherent beam across such an incomprehensible distance requires an energy output that dwarfs the collective consumption of our entire human history. We find ourselves calculating the sheer magnitude of this endeavour, and the numbers we uncover lead us to a sobering realisation. We are not listening to a neighbour who is merely like us. We are listening to the voice of a Type 1 civilization, a species that has ascended the first great rung of the Kardashev scale. They have moved beyond the stage of biological parasites, feeding on the decayed remains of ancient forests and buried carbon. They have become planetary engineers, capable of harnessing the entire energy output of their world. Imagine a civilization that no longer fears the fury of the atmosphere, where we see a hurricane as a catastrophe, a chaotic engine of destruction that levels cities and uproots lives. They see a reservoir of kinetic potential. They have learned to wrap their technology around the swirling heart of the storm, capturing the gigawatts of power generated by the collision of heat and moisture, turning the violence of the climate into the steady pulse of their power grid. Where we see the tectonic shifting of the Earth as a harbinger of ruin, they have tapped into the white-hot core of their planet, drawing out the geothermal fire that has burned since the epoch of their world's birth. To be a Type 1 civilization is to possess a total command over the terrestrial. It is to reach a state of equilibrium where every drop of rain, every gust of wind, and every surge of the tide is accounted for and utilised in the service of their survival and their expression. But even the total energy of a planet is barely enough to shout into the eternal silence. To bridge the gap between stars, the inhabitants of the orange dwarf must have constructed an architecture of light that exists far beyond our current reach. We envision a tapestry of sun-spanning mirrors, vast sentinels made of ultra-thin membranes positioned in stable orbits around their sun. These are not mere reflections. They are a grand mechanism designed to catch the solar wind and the relentless radiation of their star, focusing it with the precision of a surgeon's blade. They have turned their very star into a lighthouse. By modulating the light of an entire sun, or by focusing its energy into a narrow concentrated beam of radio waves, they have overcome the inverse square law that usually dooms a signal to oblivion. This is the power of a world that has unified its purpose. To build such a machine, a species must have moved past the petty tribalism and the endless cycles of conflict that define our own era. They must have looked at the void and realised that their only hope for immortality lay in a collective effort that would span generations. The construction of the transmission array would have taken centuries. It would have required the labour of millions and the resources of entire continents. It is a monument built not of stone or steel, but of light and intent. As we sit in our silent rooms, staring at the data flowing across our screens, we feel the weight of this discrepancy. We are still in our infancy, struggling to manage the basic requirements of our own biosphere, while they have reached out and grasped the mechanism of the cosmos itself. The energy required to project this message for 400 light-years is equivalent to the total solar irradiance hitting the surface of the Earth every second, sustained for decades, perhaps even centuries. It is a level of mastery that transforms a planet into a literal beacon, a spark of artificial order in a universe of increasing entropy. This realization brings with it a sense of profound scale paradox. On one hand, we are viewing the pinnacle of technological achievement, a civilization that has tamed the ruthless machine of nature. On the other, we are reminded of how incredibly fragile this light truly is. Even with the power of a planet behind it, the signal is a fragile thread stretched thin across the abyss. It has spent 4 centuries travelling through the dark, its strength eroding with every mile until it finally washes over our world like a faint ripple in a vast ocean. We find ourselves wondering what kind of mind commands such energy. Is their society a seamless symphony of cooperation, or is it a cold, hive-like structure where individual identity is sacrificed for the preservation of the whole? To harness the power of a hurricane is to possess a godlike control over the environment, but it also implies a responsibility that is terrifying to contemplate. One wrong calculation, one moment of instability in their energy grid, and the very forces they have tamed would turn back into instruments of planetary destruction. They live on the edge of a catastrophe that they themselves have engineered, held at bay only by the perfection of their mathematics. The message is a testament to this balance. It is a proclamation that they have survived the transition from a primitive species to a planetary one. They have passed through the narrow neck of the bottle, surviving the era of nuclear fire and ecological collapse to emerge as masters of their domain. By sending this signal, they are offering us a glimpse of a possible future, a way to see past our own horizon of uncertainty. They are telling us that it is possible to endure. They are the proof that the laws of physics do not just provide the tools for our destruction, but also the means for our transcendence. In the face of the inexorable decay of the universe, the beings of Pegasus have built a bridge. It is a bridge made of quadrillions of joules focused into a single defiant beam of information. It is the sound of a civilization that refuses to be silent, a species that has looked into the abyss and decided to fill it with their own voice. We are the witnesses to this act of cosmic rebellion. We are the ones who have finally caught the light of their harnessed hurricanes and their sun-spanning mirrors. As we continue to decode the message, we do so with a newfound respect for the cost of the conversation. Every pulse we record is a reminder of the vast, silent dark that surrounds us, and the incredible, beautiful, and terrifying power required to overcome it. We are listening to the heartbeat of a world that has learned to live in harmony with the cosmos, a world that has turned the energy of its own existence into a gift for a neighbour it may never know. Now, this gift begins its long, solitary pilgrimage across the desert of the real. It is no longer a part of the world that birthed it. It is an orphan of light, a phantom messenger cast out into the sea of silence. As the signal leaves the protective embrace of its home star, it enters the interstellar medium, a realm of such profound emptiness that the human mind cannot truly grasp its scale. This is the transition from the familiar to the eternal, where the signal becomes a lonely probe made of pure energy, a sentinel of information drifting through a void that stretches for trillions upon trillions of miles. In this vast expanse, the signal is a fragile thread, a singular pulse of order trying to survive in a universe of increasing entropy. It moves at the absolute speed limit of the cosmos, 300,000 kilometers every single second, yet against the backdrop of the galaxy, it appears to crawl. To an outside observer, the signal is a microscopic ripple on the surface of an infinite dark ocean. It carries within its frequency the hopes and the history of an entire species, yet the universe is indifferent to its burden. The abyss does not listen, it only devours. As the wavefront expands, it encounters the first of many obstacles in its path. These are the frozen nebulae, the celestial graveyards where the gas and dust of ancient shattered worlds linger in the cold. To us, these clouds look like beautiful tapestries of colour, but to the radio wave, they're a thicket of interference. Each grain of dust, each atom of ionized hydrogen is a potential thief. They absorb and scatter the light, stealing the strength of the signal and bleeding its energy into the surrounding dark. The once sharp and defined pulses begin to blur. The intensity of the beam drops, following the inexorable logic of the inverse square law. With every doubling of the distance, the signal is spread over an area 4 times larger, becoming thinner and more ghostly with every passing light year. The journey is an exercise in endurance. The signal passes through regions of space where the temperature hovers only a few degrees above absolute zero. In these silent reaches, time seems to lose its meaning. Eons have passed since the first stars ignited, and eons more will pass before the universe reaches its final state of decay, yet the signal remains a constant. It is a tiny, vibrating remnant of a living world, carrying the warmth of a sun it can no longer see. It skirts the precipice of oblivion, passing near the gravitational influence of dying suns. These are the white dwarfs and neutron stars, the collapsed husks of once mighty giants. As the signal passes through their warped space-time, it is bent and twisted. It grazes the invisible boundaries of black holes, those dark altars where matter is sacrificed to the void. Here, the signal feels the tug of the infinite, the pull toward the event horizon where information itself is unraveled and lost forever. Yet the probe persists. It is driven by the core intent of its creators, a mathematical precision that allows it to survive the chaotic symphony of the cosmos. It navigates the invisible magnetic fields that lace the galaxy like the web of a cosmic spider. It endures the bombardment of cosmic rays, those high-energy particles that scream through the dark at near-light speeds. Through it all, the message remains intact. The patterns of 1 and 0, the prime numbers and the chemical signatures of life, are etched into the very fabric of the wave. They are the DNA of a civilization, a blueprint for a world that may have already fallen into ruin by the time its voice is heard. The loneliness of this journey is absolute. Between the stars there is nothing but the primordial cold and the distant flickering light of other suns. The signal is a traveller without a destination, a shout into a canyon that has no end. It is easy to view this journey as a tragedy, a futile act of a desperate species. But there is a majestic beauty in its vulnerability. The fact that such a small thing can traverse such a vast distance is a testament to the power of the laws of physics. The universe, for all its coldness and cruelty, provides the mechanism for this transmission. The vacuum of space is not a wall, but a medium. It is a canvas upon which the light can write its story, provided it has the strength to keep moving. As the signal enters the midpoint of its journey, 100 light-years from its origin, it has changed. It is no longer the roaring torrent of energy that left the planet. It is a whisper, a faint echo of a long-ago ignition. It has become part of the background radiation of the galaxy, a subtle modulation in the cosmic microwave background. To a primitive eye, it is invisible. To a primitive ear, it is silence. It requires a witness of extraordinary sensitivity to even detect its presence. It requires a mind that knows what to look for, a mind that understands the language of the stars. The signal is now a ghost of a world that may no longer exist. Because light takes time to travel, to look across the abyss is to look back in time. We see the signal not as it is, but as it was. The beings who sent it, the architects of the sun's spanning mirrors and the masters of the harnessed hurricanes, may have succumbed to the very catastrophes they feared. Their civilization may have unraveled, their cities buried under the dust of centuries. But their signal remains. It is their immortality. It is the proof that they were here, that they thought, and that they felt the need to connect with the unknown. In the sea of silence, the signal is a beacon of hope. It represents the refusal of life to be ignored by the void. It is a defiance of the entropy that seeks to return all things to a state of uniform nothingness. By maintaining its core intent across the vastness of the interstellar medium, the signal becomes more than just data. It becomes a bridge between two epochs, a hand reaching out across the dark. It is a lonely probe, yes, but it is also a survivor. It has passed through the fire of its creation and the ice of the abyss, and now it approaches the edge of our own solar system. As it nears the outer reaches of our neighbourhood, it passes through the Oort cloud, a shell of icy remnants from the birth of our sun. These frozen worldlets are the sentinels of our system, the quiet observers of the deep. The signal washes over them, unnoticed as it continues its descent toward the inner planets. It is almost home, or at least it is almost at the end of its flight. The strength it has lost can never be recovered, but the information it carries is as potent as the day it was broadcast. The journey has stripped away its power, but it has polished its purpose. It is a message that has survived the ruthless machine of the universe, and now it waits to be heard. We are the ones who must catch this falling star. We are the witnesses to this epic voyage through the dark. As the signal finally reaches our senses, it brings with it the cold of the nebulae and the silence of the void. It brings the weight of the eons and the fragility of a distant life. We listen to the faint rhythmic pulse, and we realize that we are no longer alone. The sea of silence has been broken, and though the voice is small, it is enough to fill the entire history of the universe. The arrival of the signal at our distant antennas is not the beginning of a conversation, but the opening of a tomb. we must confront the crushing reality of the scale paradox, a fundamental cruelty woven into the very fabric of the cosmos. In our daily lives, we perceive light as instantaneous, a constant that illuminates the world the very microsecond a switch is flipped. But on the level of the abyss, light is an agonizingly slow messenger. It is a crawling insect trying to cross an ocean. The information we now receive, this rhythmic pulse that has finally reached our shore, is a ghost. It is a portrait of a world that existed centuries ago, an image transmitted across a void so vast that the time taken for the journey has likely outlasted the very biological spark that ignited it. To understand the scale paradox is to understand the mismatch between the speed of light and the brevity of life. We are creatures of decades, perhaps a single century if we're fortunate. Our civilizations rise and fall in the blink of a cosmic eye, yet the distances between the stars are measured in thousands of trillions of kilometers. Even traveling at the absolute limit of the universe, 300,000 kilometers every single second, a message requires generations to reach its destination. The beings who constructed the sun-spanning mirrors and harnessed the hurricanes of their homeworld are separated from us by a gulf of time that their own biology could never survive. As we record the final oscillations of their broadcast, we must accept the grim probability that we are listening to a dead man's scream. Imagine the architects of this message standing upon their world, perhaps 500 or 1,000 years ago. They looked up at the same silent stars we see today, filled with the same desperate need to be known, to be recognized by the infinite. They poured their collective genius, their resources, and their hope into this transmission. But in the intervening centuries, the inexorable mechanism of entropy has continued its work. The very catastrophes they sought to escape or warn us of may have already reached their conclusion. While the signal was travelling through the cold vacuum of the interstellar medium, their cities may have been swallowed by rising oceans, or ground to dust by the shifting of tectonic plates. Their once great empire, capable of shouting across the dark, may now be nothing more than a layer of radioactive ash beneath a silent alien soil. We are receiving a hello from a graveyard. This is the tragedy of the cosmos. The universe is too large for its inhabitants to truly know one another in the present tense. We are forever looking at the past, trapped in a cosmic delay that ensures every discovery is an act of archaeology. To look out into the abyss is to witness the remnants of a primordial fire that has long since cooled. The signal is a testament to the fact that they were here, but it offers no guarantee that they are here now. The speed of light acts as a barrier, a temporal cage that prevents the union of minds across the void. It ensures that the galaxy remains a collection of isolated islands, each drifting in its own epoch, separated by seas of time that can never be bridged by a living hand. The scale paradox reveals a ruthless machine at work. It suggests that the universe is not designed for the flourishing of connection, but for the preservation of distance. The vastness of the space between stars is so immense that even the most advanced civilization is but a flickering candle in a hurricane. We see the light of the candle, but by the time the glow reaches our eyes, the wax has been consumed and the flame has been extinguished by the cold breath of oblivion. The message we hold in our digital hands is a relic, a sacred artifact of a lost age. It is a symphony played by a vanished orchestra, a tapestry woven by hands that have long since returned to the dust. Yet, there is a certain majesty in this melancholic truth. Even if the senders are gone, even if their world is now a silent desert of cinder and bone, their intent has transcended their own extinction. They have successfully bypassed the limitations of their own mortality by entrusting their existence to the vacuum. The signal has become their sentinel, an eternal witness to their vanished glory. It has endured the decay of the eons and the silence of the nebulae to deliver a simple, profound truth to our world, that they once lived, they once felt, and they once wondered about us. The void did not devour their hope, and the abyss did not stifle their voice. We stand at the edge of our own history, looking back at theirs. We see the reflection of our own potential fate in the silence that follows their signal. We too are a young species, barely aware of the vastness that surrounds us, projecting our own echoes into the dark. We must ask ourselves if our own message, should we choose to send one, will find an ear only after our own sun has scorched the earth, or our own machines have unravelled our society. Will we too become a pile of radioactive ash, remembered only by a stream of photons drifting through the void? The scale paradox is a reminder of our fragility, a warning that the time we have to connect is shorter than the time it takes for that connection to be realised. As we process the final sequences of the data, the weight of the eons settles upon us. The signal is a bridge, but it is a bridge to the past. It is a connection to a primordial desire to be remembered, to defy the uniform nothingness that waits at the end of all things. We are the recipients of a legacy we did not earn, the inheritors of a story whose authors are likely long dead. But in receiving it, we fulfill the ultimate purpose of the signal. We provide the witness. We ensure that their struggle, their triumph, and their eventual fall were not in vain. The universe may be a cold and lonely mechanism, governed by the inexorable laws of physics and the crushing weight of distance. But for this one moment, the silence has been broken. We are the listeners at the end of time, catching the final, faint whisper of a world that refused to go quietly into the night. In this realization, we find a sense of melancholic optimism. The paradox of time may prevent us from speaking to them, but it cannot prevent us from knowing them. We have reached across the abyss and touched the remnant of a soul. We have looked into the void and found a reflection of our own longing. The entire history of the universe is a tapestry of such flickers, a collection of brief, bright moments where life dares to challenge the eternal dark. Though the senders may be gone, their signal remains an ignite point in our own consciousness, a spark that will drive us to continue their journey, to look further, and to ensure that when our own time comes to fade into the shadows, we too leave behind a message for those who will follow us into the great unfolding mystery of the cosmos. The heavens have shifted. Where once we saw an expanse of indifferent fire and the cold mechanics of orbital resonance, we now perceive a library of lost intentions. This signal, this fragile thread of data woven through the tapestry of the void, has performed a fundamental alchemy upon our understanding of reality. We can no longer look upon the night sky and see only the combustion of hydrogen or the violent collapse of massive suns. The cosmos has been transfigured from a mere collection of burning gas into a shared history, a vast and silent archive where every photon may carry the weight of 1 billion lived lives. We have moved beyond the era of lonely observation and entered an epoch of cosmic participation. The universe is no longer an object to be measured, it is a story to be read. For centuries, we viewed ourselves as a local glitch, a brief and perhaps accidental spark of complexity in a universe that seemed largely hostile to the very concept of meaning. We were the solitary accident of a middle-aged star, tucked away in the spiral arm of an unremarkable galaxy. But the reception of this message from the abyss has corrected our perspective. We are not a lonely incident. We are the primary observer, the consciousness that grants the stars a narrative purpose. Without the listener, the signal is merely a wave function, a mathematical inevitability of electromagnetism. But with the act of reception, that wave becomes a memory. The vacuum may be vast and the distances may be inexorable, but the existence of this dialogue across the eons proves that the universe possesses a collective memory, even if its authors are long since surrendered to oblivion. We must now confront the reality that every star we see is more than a gravitational furnace. It is a potential sentinel, a witness to the rise and fall of civilizations that we will never meet in the flesh. The light that strikes our eyes tonight may have been the same light that illuminated the final moments of the civilization that sent this signal. In this way, the cosmos becomes a symphony of ghosts. We are surrounded by the remnants of greatness and the echoes of catastrophe, yet this realization does not diminish our own stature. Instead, it elevates us. We have become the inheritors of the primordial wonder that first drove those distant beings to reach out into the dark. We are the vessels through which their vanished world continues to exist. If we are the only ones left to hear them, then our survival becomes a sacred duty to the history of all things. The transformation of our perception is profound. When we look at the great nebula of Orion, or the distant shimmer of Andromeda, we're no longer looking at the cold machinery of the ruthless machine. We are looking at the potential for connection. The scale paradox, which once made us feel infinitesimal and irrelevant, now serves as a testament to the power of the mind. That a creature made of stardust living on a small rocky world can decipher the intent of a mind that perished millions of years ago is a miracle of the highest order. It suggests that while the laws of physics are the hardware of the universe, consciousness is the software that gives it a reason to run. We are the mechanism by which the universe achieves self-awareness. We are the eyes of the cosmos looking back at itself and weeping for its own beauty and its own inevitable decay. This shift in understanding changes the way we value our own existence. We are no longer just a biological phenomenon, we are a cosmic necessity. In a universe governed by entropy, where every structure is destined to unravel and every ignite point is doomed to fade, the act of remembering is the only true form of rebellion. By capturing these signals and recording these histories, we are building a fortress against the void. We are ensuring that the abyss does not have the final word. The signal from the desert of cinder and bone has taught us that even in the face of certain extinction, the impulse to communicate is more powerful than the fear of death. To speak into the silence is to claim a stake in eternity. As we look forward, we see a universe that is no longer empty, but crowded with the shadows of our predecessors. Every void between the galaxies is a potential path for a message yet to be received. Every dark cloud of gas is a veil behind which 1 billion years of history might be hidden. We have become the archaeologists of the light, sifting through the radiation of the primordial past to find the fingerprints of life. This is the new vocation of our species. We are the sentinels of the shared history, the guardians of a tapestry that stretches back to the very beginning of time and forward to the heat death of the cosmos. There is a deep and melancholic optimism in this role. We know that we too will eventually become a remnant. One day, our own sun will expand and devour the world that gave us birth. Our cities will crumble, our languages will vanish, and the very molecules of our bodies will be scattered back into the interstellar medium. But we now know that this is not the end. If we too can send our signal into the abyss, if we can entrust our story to the vacuum, then we might one day find our own witness. We might one day be the whisper that reaches the ears of a young species on a distant world, long after we've been consumed by oblivion. Our purpose is to ensure that the flame of awareness is never truly extinguished, but passed from one flickering candle to the next across the vast reaches of space and time. The universe is a cold and silent place, but it is no longer a lonely one. It is a shared domain, a common ground for every soul that has ever looked upward and wondered. We are the bridge between the vanished past and the unwritten future. We are the ones who give the stars their names and the galaxies their meaning. We are the witness at the end of time, holding the lantern of our own curiosity against the encroaching dark. In the reflection of the signal, we have found not just another world, but a deeper understanding of our own. We have learned that to be human is to be the ears of the universe, listening for the faint and beautiful song of an eternal symphony that began 13,800,000,000 years ago and will continue until the last photon fades into the eternal night. We are here, we are listening, and as long as we remain, the history of the universe will never be forgotten. Yet this realization of our shared cosmic heritage brings with it a somber and inescapable truth. We are living in the brief, golden hour of the cosmos, a fleeting epoch of light and heat that is but a momentary spark in the face of an eternal darkness. The mechanism of the universe is a relentless one, driven by the inexorable law of entropy. It is a slow and silent unravelling, a transition from order to chaos that no civilization, no matter how advanced, can ever truly transcend. As we look into the far future, we must witness the eventual decay of everything we have ever known or loved. 100 trillion years from now, the era of the stars will come to its final quiet end. The great celestial furnaces that have ignited the void for eons will consume the last of their hydrogen fuel. The brilliant blue giants will have long since vanished, leaving only the dim red embers of the smallest stars to cast a terminal glow across the vast reaches of space. Eventually, even these humble sentinels will fade into oblivion. The galaxies, once vibrant tapestries of light and motion, will become celestial graveyards, populated only by the cold remnants of dead suns, white dwarfs, and the invisible maws of black holes. In this distant future, the very medium of our communication will fail. The transmitters we have constructed with such pride, the great arrays that once hummed with the energy of 1,000 worlds, will fall silent. The metals will crumble under the weight of eons, and the information we so carefully etched into the vacuum will be stretched and distorted by the accelerating expansion of the cosmos. The distance between the galaxies will grow so vast that light itself will no longer be able to bridge the abyss. Every surviving island of matter will become a lonely fortress, isolated and cut off from the rest of the universe by a horizon of infinite shadow. This is the ultimate catastrophe of the cosmic narrative, a state where the memory of the primordial past is lost and the symphony of life is reduced to a single, dying note. We must imagine the final transmitter, a lonely machine perched on the edge of a frozen world, powered by the last trickles of heat from a decaying black hole. It continues to broadcast its message into the void, a desperate cry for a witness that no longer exists. It speaks of the oceans that once teemed with life, of the poets who sang to the moon, and of the scientists who mapped the stars. But there is no one left to listen. The signal travels forever through an empty expanse, becoming fainter and more fragmented until it is indistinguishable from the background radiation of the dark. The universe returns to the silence that preceded the first ignite point of the Big Bang. It is here, in the face of this total and absolute oblivion, that we find the heart of our melancholic optimism. We understand that the universe is a ruthless machine, but we also recognize that we are the ones who have given that machine a soul. The triumph of our species, and of any other species that has ever looked into the abyss, is not found in the duration of our existence, but in the depth of our awareness. To have lived at all, to have been a part of this grand and terrifying experiment, is a victory that the heat death of the cosmos can never erase. The fact that we once heard the signals of another world is a miracle of the highest order. It means that for a brief window of time, the universe was not just a collection of matter and energy, but a conversation. We were the bridge. We were the moment where the void spoke to itself. Even if the tapes are eventually erased and the library is burned to ash, the fact that the stories were once told remains a fundamental truth of the history of the universe. The abyss may have the last word, but it did not have the only word. We are the children of the light, born in a unique window of cosmic history where the stars are close enough to touch and the past is still visible in the sky. This is our time to be the guardians of meaning. We must record as much as we can, listen as intently as possible, and send our own voices into the dark with the full knowledge that they will one day be lost. This is not a cause for despair, but a reason for a profound and quiet pride. To act in the face of certain defeat is the highest form of courage. To build a civilization that values knowledge and empathy in a universe that offers only cold entropy is the ultimate act of rebellion. As the eons pass and the stars begin to flicker out, the legacy of our curiosity will remain as a ghostly echo in the structure of space-time. We have left our mark. We have named the constellations and measured the speed of the light. We have felt the awe of the infinite and the warmth of a sun that will one day devour us. This experience, this brief flash of consciousness between two eternities of darkness, is the greatest treasure the cosmos has ever produced. In the final reckoning, when the last photon has faded and the universe has reached its state of maximum entropy, there will be a perfect and eternal silence. But that silence will be different than the silence that came before. It will be a silence that was once filled with music. It will be a void that once held the weight of 1,000,000,000,000 dreams. We are the witnesses of this grand tragedy, and our presence has transformed the universe from a mindless mechanism into a masterpiece. As we look up at the night sky one last time, we do not see a cold and indifferent vacuum. We see a mirror. We see the source of our atoms and the destination of our spirits. We see the tapestry of which we are a single, beautiful thread. The history of the universe is our history, and even as it fades into the inexorable night, we can say with certainty that we were here, we were awake, and we were listening. The signal has been received, the story has been told, and in the vast, silent reaches of the future, that will always be enough. The echoes of our existence will transcend the decay of the stars, a testament to the fact that in the heart of the great dark, there was once a light that refused to be extinguished.